3 months until the end of 2025. We need to start seriously analyzing what 2026 will look like. 2025 was a very complicated year because it marked the arrival of Donald Trump's administration to the presidency. There was still inflation that hadn't been brought under control, Donald Trump's press plan, the whole issue of tariffs, and the internal dynamics of the U.S. have changed a lot from an economic standpoint. Additionally, he launched a direct war against the Federal Reserve to push for lower rates. But the Federal Reserve has not given in to that political pressure. Right now, in October, we're facing a government shutdown. In other words, it seemed like this was going to be the first calm year after so many years of turmoil. However, so many macroeconomic factors and issues within the cities themselves have completely changed the outlook for what this year would be, since each state and each city has faced its own challenges with pricing, inventory, affordability, and national interest rates, all needing to be balanced for us to have what would be considered a normal year. Will 2026 be a normal year? By then, Donald Trump will have been in power for almost a year. The Fed will have already started to lower rates, and it seems likely that for the rest of 2025, they will continue to reduce them. But what exactly is the so-called equilibrium rate for the economy? Will the Fed really stop in 2025 or in 2026? Will it keep lowering interest rates? There are a lot of factors involved when it comes to predicting what 2026 will be like. What is certain is that there is much less turmoil, unless some new phenomenon occurs. But it seems, at least from what we're seeing politically, that we're going to have a pretty calm year, with a brief pause when we have the midterm elections around July. In July and August, we'll see a lot of political activity as part of the United States Congress is up for re-election, and there could be some economic factors involved in all of this. As always, we'll be analyzing it here on this conversational podcast. We're going to talk about what we see, what we believe at Endert Miami Real Estate for 2026. Myself, Gabriel Peru, as CEO of Endert Miami Real Estate, and Janet Molina as Chief Operating Officer, who oversees all the real estate agents. With her day-to-day experience with clients and agents, she can tell you firsthand how they are actually perceiving or feeling about what is going to happen. Jenny, as a preamble, do you see 2026 as positive or negative? In just a few words.
Positive. I see it as positive. For the real estate sector, yes.
What do you think will be the main factor setting the agenda for 2026? Inventory, price, interest rates?
Look, the main factor is going to be interest rates, as I see it, because all the other factors will move based on that. Interest rates. I've always said that we, as buyers or consumers, had pretty high expectations of a price crash. And now in 2025, with the economy stabilizing, we've already had many months under the new administration, and the fact that tariffs didn't cause inflation, everything is stabilizing. Now, it's just a matter of interest rates coming down. And once interest rates reach the plan level, the market will balance out. So this is what I think is needed for everything to reach the point where it should be. In my opinion, the pre-pandemic normal isn't coming back. We have to get used to a new scenario, no matter which city we're living in. There have been economic changes in mindset and demographic changes, and based on that, the real estate market is going to move. So depending on the city you're in, of course, there's more or less inventory, and prices are going to work like this. When interest rates go down and reach the point where they're expected to go.
That point where they're expected to go isn't going to be reached so easily, Jenny, because nobody really knows what that point is. I mean, it's impossible for everyone to be satisfied. We're seeing that the neutral rate being discussed for the Federal Reserve is 3% for the Fed's rate. This could mean roughly a 5.5% or 5.75% mortgage rate by the end of next year. But then again, who says that's a good rate when most of the existing mortgages in the United States right now are under 5%? So I don't see that a 5, 5.5, or even a 6 is where we want to end up, even if we reach the point we were aiming for. I don't think anyone wants to end up at 5.5. I think everyone wants to get to a 4, which just isn't going to happen, at least not until 2026, Unless, unfortunately, we have another pandemic, a civil war, or something huge like that. But I think it's pretty idealistic to think we're going to get where we want to go. Do we really want to get to 5.75?
The thing is, there are two factors that have a big influence on the market. Like I said before, there was, or even still is, an excess of expectations for the real estate market in many ways. Prices crashing, interest rates dropping really low, and so on.
We're talking about 2026.
Listen, and I just said it, we're truly living in a new normal now. It's a really
A new abnormality.
the new normal that's coming. We have to get used to the fact that the market won't be what it used to be. People are thinking that everything is going to go back to how it was before. That's not going to happen. The change is that you, as a consumer, have to get used to the fact that what there is what there is.
We have to get used to the bad. I mean, what's there at 6% is kind of good. Let's get used to the bad and work at 6%.
You have to get used to what's available, and you have to prepare yourself as a buyer. I mean, as a buyer, you have to get ready. We've said it before. By increasing your income, fixing your credit history, having a bigger down payment, looking for a property where you can negotiate on many factors. But normality is whatever exists in the city where you are because, for example, Miami condos are one reality and Miami houses are a different reality. Let's talk.
About that, Jenny. And why not buy a condo in Miami in 2026, where most of the condo properties have already overcome the infestations, and where we could have a scenario where the special assessment has already been paid, and you can buy a condo where that association, which was the big problem, no longer exists. Additionally, the governor of Florida has been helping with the issue of associations by saying you don't necessarily have to have reserves. You can also have an open line of credit. So, all these changes are happening. Wouldn't buying a condo be a good purchase?
Look, you know that condos have always been the first step for someone who's starting their life. It was their first. But would it be?
A good idea to buy one in 2026?
Of course, if you find a condo, like yesterday, for example, we were with a client, there are 5% reserves. The unit isn't that old, it's perfect because the value works out. I mean, the value allows someone to get into a $280,000 condo and have a monthly payment that's very close to what they'd pay in rent.
In 2026, will the demonization of condos, people saying they're the worst thing in Florida, finally go away?
Look, 2026 is getting closer to what you call the de-demonization of condos because many have already started to comply and more will keep doing so. They're fixing their management, getting their certifications, they're doing everything they need to do. The answer is yes.
New homes, Jenny, I'm seeing that new homes are becoming, and keep becoming, something really interesting. This Saturday, we're going to have the podcast with the people from Leaner. We're going to be interviewing the folks from Leaner from the International Sales Office, and there are a lot of incentives. When we talk to them, they say yes, prices might be coming down, but in the end, the sales strategy is the sales strategy. It's like thinking that if you're going to buy a car, you won't see balloons at the entrance, the car all nicely decorated, and they'll give you options and upgrades. I mean, that's just their way of selling. It seems like Leaner and D.R. Horton aren't going to change their way of selling, even if they dress up the incentives. Could 2026 be a year to keep considering buying a new home?
Look, I think that by 2026, the opportunities for new homes won't really be opportunities for buyers anymore. Reasons. As we discussed in previous podcasts, the builders are losing out. They're either losing money or just not making as much. Their profits are going down. Because of this, little by little, they're going to slow down the pace of their construction, and that's why the incentives will decrease. Honestly, I think the whole incentive thing is going to be a much bigger opportunity in these next 3 months left of 2025. But in addition, I want to mention pre-construction. We've been saying for a year or more that the prices were good, that they were better than used homes, and that it made sense to get into these units. But you also have to be clear that even though it's a good business, it also has its downsides. The downside is that it's really far away, And the downside is that most pre-construction projects have what's called the CDD, which is the cost for the area's urban development, and that stays on your taxes for 30 to 40 years. Additionally, most of them have homeowners associations. So because of the incentives, it probably makes sense over these next 3 years to try to buy a new unit. Keeping in mind what I just mentioned, I don't think next year will be so motivating or encouraging to go buy a new home.
I'm not so sure that buying a new home won't be motivating. I think the underlying reasons for buying a new home will still be there. Today on the podcast, we talked about how builders are going to build less, and I think they're going to face the same thing. They'll reduce their own inventories, and by reducing their own inventories, they'll end up with that situation because in reality, they're not really going to reduce inventories. What they'll do is approach construction with a more critical eye, but they can't lose their market share. Most of them are public companies, and since they're public companies, they have to generate dividends. That's a machine that can't be stopped. I'll go back to the car comparison. It's like telling all of Toyota, hey, you're not going to sell Corollas because now is the time to sell trucks. No, I'm going to try to sell trucks. Corollas, I'm going to try to sell whatever, because at the end of the day, my purpose is to sell, and they realize they can compete with used homes. And that being far away is a lie. I'm offering you a new life. How many clients come to us, Aventura, Naples, Tampa, Fort Myers, because it's an unlivable city? I don't want to keep living in Miami. The traffic is unbearable. There's insecurity. It's complicated. Taxes are high. They sell you that new life, local areas, the idea, neighborhoods where they tell you, look, everything is new, roads are new, the supermarket is new, there's no traffic, traffic lights are people friendly, sidewalks are in good shape. And whoever wants to stay says, no, I just love living in Miami, where I can't walk down the street because there are no sidewalks, where they're redoing sewers and streets are all torn up, where there's insecurity, etc., etc., etc. I think that promise of a new life is going to appeal to young people, to the elderly, and to the working class. Because if someone told me today that there's a better opportunity for life in Ocala, and I have two small kids, and I see that in Kindle it's a hassle with the kids, taking them to school, picking them up, I want that new life. And on top of that, if you offer me an incentive, I want that incentive. And if there might be work, I want that job too. I also think that 2026, being a year of stability, is going to reset people's minds and make them ask themselves, can I start thinking about leaving again? Before the pandemic, no one thought beyond their bubble. During the pandemic, everyone rethought things, but many of us ended up running around like headless chickens. Move, make decisions fast, buy 3 houses because of interest rates, and people faced unnecessary problems. Or they moved, go to Texas, and everyone went to Texas because it was the best, and now it's back to Florida. I think 2026 also brings mental stability after getting through so much during the pandemic, so people can finally buy that new ticket to peace of mind. Another really important point, Jenny, that I would like to bring up for the upcoming year of 2026 is the crucial topic of exactly how people can adequately prepare themselves. We talk a lot about getting ready, get ready, get ready, get ready, but it's complicated to prepare when the economy is so unpredictable. Don't you think that government assistance or subsidies will be available in 2026? When I say rents, I mean more affordable rents because there's more supply, or government assistance in some way so that young people can buy or at least get into a home, even if it's a small one. Do you think those will exist in 2026?
Government assistance. You already know the situation we're in. We don't know if it will exist or not. That's why the most important thing is that you rely on yourself. And if there's any assistance, great, you take advantage of it. And if not, you're already able to handle the rent on your own.
But I didn't really get that part. How can it exist and not exist?
My position, both for my clients and for myself, is that I have to be prepared to be self-sufficient. And if I can qualify for some assistance, great, that's perfect. Help from wherever it comes, whether it's from the government, from the seller, from the landlord, I'll take the help, and that's perfect for me. I'll make the most of it. But at the end of the day, I have to prepare myself. I have to be able to get what I'm looking for, whether it's renting or buying. So that's my opinion and my expectation or my recommendation, because especially for 2026, rents have to, based on what I've seen and what I've observed in the market, if you can't buy, you go to the rental market. Rental prices should have dropped a lot, and I don't see prices dropping as much as many people say. What I see is that prices have stopped going up. I even see that prices are going down a little, very little, 1%, maybe 2%. It obviously depends a lot on the area where you're living. It depends a lot on the area where you're looking, but in my opinion, this is what's going to keep happening. Through 2026, rents are going to hold their prices. They're not going to drop. No, they're not going to drop significantly and will keep holding steady at current prices.
Yes, when it comes to government assistance, I'm much more optimistic, Jenny. I think the Trump administration is going to have to make it a priority. We've seen Pulte, who is the head of the government housing office, really pushing for more focus on the true credit score. That's extremely important that they don't just look at things like credit cards, cars, and so on, but also consider, for example, your rent payments. If you're someone who's rented for 5 years and always paid on time, nobody checks that credit score. That's not included in your credit score. But it turns out that's the most important payment you make, and you do it on time. That means that if someone has spent 5 years paying for something that isn't even theirs and always paid on time, they're even more likely to pay for their own home and pay it on time. I think that TrueScore is really going to help a lot. I think that taking Funi and Freddie C to the New York Stock Exchange, even if they're still government-sponsored enterprises, and opening them up to some private investment, since these two companies are basically the ones in charge of buying back the loans given in the housing sector, I think that's going to help a lot because it'll create more competition and strengthen that area. Remember that these companies are just chilling, they're relaxed. Why is that? Well, because in the end, they're government-sponsored enterprises. And you know what happens when you're backed by the government. I know I'm not going to go bankrupt. I know I'm fine. I have the business I need. I don't care about growing. But when I get pressure from Wall Street shareholders who call me every 3 months and ask, what are you doing? Did you give out more credit? At what rate did you give the credit? I need you to give out credit. Why aren't you giving out credit? I know people in Miami have money. Target them. Credit the people there. They're going to start moving. These companies are definitely going to help. They come to say, how do we get people in? Like 3 with 1 in 5. They're going to tell Governor DeSantis, let's roll out the Home Time Hero for everyone so we can provide a second mortgage assistance within the home to help pull together a down payment. I mean, I think there will be ways. The Trump administration has to find ways to make housing affordable, especially since we're heading into an election year. One of the biggest problems right now, especially for young people, who are a group President Donald Trump is focused on because he realized he can reach that demographic, is due to all the progress made by Charlie Kirk and the whole wave of patriotism that's been sparked among young people. I think one of the things the administration owes these young people is housing. How is it possible that someone who's 22, 23, or 24 years old can't even get close to owning a home? Because if you don't get help from your parents or grandparents, it's impossible. That person has already graduated, works in a hospital,